It's alive! It's roadworthy again! Well, kind of. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Wizard Shop. This is my 1969 Citroën DS that is actually back on the road again. And if you notice, when I pulled up, it wasn't doing the click, 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 click stuff anymore, because it has new balls, and they're blue balls too. Some of them have blue on them. Really, really interesting. We still have a ways to go on this thing. When I first bought this car, I couldn't really just go take it out and drive it because the suspension was hard like cinder blocks for suspension. The balls were deflated. That, and it had many other leaks and things going on. I just really didn't trust taking it down the road and something give out and I crash. So I really haven't had a chance to take it out. This time we have. We'll go for a quick little cruise here after we get done talking about it. But it runs and drives again. The suspension is working. The suspension is leak-free, but we found more leaks and more troubles. Let's get the cart full of parts over here and take a look at kind of what we've done. So like I mentioned, it has all new spheres, the accumulators. There's like 5 of them. There's quite a number of cylinders as well, which actually is the suspension and everything for this car. I'll show you the box here. Lots of spheres, cylinders, boots, all kinds of things that were shot. Then I'll roll the cart over and you guys can look down into this box. It has the old leaky, nasty calipers. You can see there's some caliper brackets. We reuse the ones that we have. This thing is not immaculate and perfect condition. I'm not too worried about being painted and pretty. A lot of this stuff's going to be going back to Rob Murdoch, but there you can see these calipers were pretty leaky. There's the old pads, which are interesting. The old pads came off. They actually had some material left on them, but they're just soaked in the hydraulic fluid. But they're very interesting. They have like a grid pattern on the back. I think they're like air-cooled or something. They actually have the Citroën symbol in the middle. But I still have issues to deal with. The carburetor is acting up. It still has leaks, although it's not the suspension or brakes that are leaking now. It is the steering rack. It was very difficult to really decipher what is leaking and what is not leaking because the whole underside of the car was just green fluid everywhere. I knew the suspension was messed up because the way it would ride. I decided, let's just get that sorted out. Get it running and driving so then we can go from there. And that's what we've done. It runs and it drives fine. The brakes work fine. Those leaks have been solved, but now we have leaks, like I said, on the steering rack. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up. I'll show you the different modes that it has. It has low, medium, and high. And then we'll open up the hood and dive under the hood. You'll notice when I start it, it has a high idle. That's because the carburetor needs to be pulled apart and gone through. It's gummed up and nasty in there. And even under full throttle, when you take it out on the road, it just can't. The carburetor is kind of gummed up inside. But I'll go ahead and start it and show you guys what it does. You hear that, guys? It's not clicking anymore. It used to be really annoying, constantly clicking. That's because it was over-pressurizing and having to relieve the pressure. The spheres were all depleted, and now it works fine. I'll go ahead and lower it all the way to the lowest setting, just like a lowrider. There's a little lever down here by your left foot that operates the suspension. I'll go ahead and put it to normal level. There's normal level, and I'll even go to the high level. There's like 2 or 3 high levels. This is the highest one. You could take this thing in the mountains and go off-roading with it. It sits really high. And actually the ground clearance between the bottom of the car and the ground actually really great. There's nothing hanging down. I'll put it back to its normal level. Going down. You'll notice every once in a while it actually has a clicking noise. It's supposed to do it every 30 seconds or every minute on a good running system. It's not supposed to do it constantly though. I'll go ahead and turn this thing off. Let's go ahead and pop the hood or bonnet or capo. I think in French it's capo or something like that. So let's go ahead and open that up. There's that side. And that one. Let's go ahead and open up the hood. There's our little backwards 4-cylinder. I mentioned in previous videos that this thing definitely is backwards. The transmission is up here. The engine's in the back. You can see the new spheres. They have blue rings on them. Those are on the front suspension cylinders. There's also a new sphere way down there. It's probably hard to see, but on the side of the engine block. But there's our carburetor. I've tried adjustments. Some of the adjustments don't even do anything. And it had bad fuel in it when the car arrived. So I believe it probably just needs to be cleaned up inside. It's probably got some gunk in it in the idle jets. And also in the acceleration pump, if it even has one, I'm not sure. But when you get on it, it doesn't do anything. It just kind of dies almost. If I push the choke all the way in, it will die. No matter what adjustments I do, it just dies. It definitely needs to come off and be gone through.
Wizard, I think your car's marking its territory. It looks like a little antifreeze, maybe?
No, it's actually not antifreeze. The hydraulic fluid that's in the system is actually green. It actually looks just like antifreeze. Here, I'll show you. You can see in there, it's bright green. It looks like I filled this thing up with antifreeze, but I didn't. This actually could throw you for a loop if you had green puddle on the ground. You really would need to actually look at the fluid, if it's oily or if it's watery, or kind of decide what's actually leaking. This takes like a mineral oil, special mineral oil for the system, and it's green just like antifreeze. So that could be very, very confusing if you saw green puddles on the ground. So the leak you just saw there is actually the steering rack. The boots on either side are leaking. We're going to have to pull the steering rack out and then do the seals on that. And the carburetor. But enough talking. Let's go for a cruise in this thing. It actually is safe to drive. It drives just fine. It's kind of interesting. It's a very, very strange car. Let's take it out for a cruise. This thing is very, very strange. It deviates from everything you could ever know about a normal car. It has a single spoke steering wheel. There's no other spokes. The horn is actually on a lever. Right there. Here's our wipers. Here we have our headlights. You actually twist it. And there's our high beams. When you go to start the car, you turn the key, but you don't actually start it right here. It's actually a little blue button over here. I'll put the clutch in. Starts right up. It has a little button here. You guys can let me know in the comments if you know what it is. I push it. It looks like a pedal, and it lights up this light over here. I have no idea what that does. We have our hazards, some sort of interior lights. This is our blower to actually blow air on us. There's our high beam indicator, which it's barely working. You can't see it really. It does work. Here's our rear defrost. You see a little green light comes on. And then strangely on the passenger side, the passenger gets to control the radio. They have the radio all the way over there. Down here in the center we have hot, cold, we have floor or vents, and we have various different levels here. I'm not sure even what that one does. But anyways, let's put it in gear and go. Get up here on the road and see what this thing can do. It does have a clicking noise. I think one of the front CV shafts needs a U-joint in it. on the tree. Cruising in the Citroën, guys. Citroën, I should say. Speedometer does not work. The odometer does. Probably going about 40 miles an hour here. What a strange little car. It's very smooth, isn't it, Mrs. Wizard?
It is quite shockingly smooth.
Very, very smooth. You don't feel any bumps or any deviations in the road. It's as if you're on like a train. It just stays the same height, the same smooth ride all the time. I'm not sure if this center spoke is supposed to be centered over here or if it's normal to be here, or I don't know. Turn around here. Someone got stuck or something. Now, I'm going to floor it and you'll see it makes like pinging noises. Here we go again. It does not like full throttle. I think the acceleration pump or whatever is out in it. But under half throttle, it gets moving just fine. Try our wipers. Well, those work. Very happy to be actually cruising in the Citroën now and not having it on a lift being torn apart. But we still have a long ways to go. Did you enjoy that, Mrs. Wizard?
It was quite enjoyable. It was my maiden cruise in this car.
Yep, you finally got to ride in the DS. It is a really interesting ride. If you ever get a chance to ride in one, you really should, because it's unlike any car on the planet. I don't care if you're Range Rover on air suspension or a Rolls Royce. I don't care what it is. It's not going to ride as good as a Citroën DS. It just won't. One thing that's really strange about this car, actually Danielson pointed out, is the antenna up here. It almost reminds me of those deep sea fish, the angler fish that has a little light bulb or something out on the front of its angler tip. I don't know why the antenna is there, but I guess it works. The brakes are also very strange. If you've never driven one before and you just hop in one and go, you're probably going to lock up the wheels. Because even on the most fancy sports car, it's still going to have a little bit of play in the brakes when you hit the brakes. Maybe only 1/8 of an inch, but it's still a little bit of movement there. In this car, there is zero movement. As soon as you touch the pedal, it starts stopping. And full brake force is only within 1/8 of an inch. It's not like the pedal goes way down or halfway to the floor, or there's very little movement in the brake pedal to get drastic braking pressure. And it's because it is hydraulically boosted. It uses the hydraulic system that runs the suspension is also the power to run the brakes. Rolls-Royce and Bentley of the 70s, 80s, 90s, they used this system on their cars. And their brakes feel the same way. It's very touchy, it's very strange. So we've come a long ways with this old 69 DS. It is running and driving. It can go on the road now without literally knocking your teeth out, being so stiff on the suspension. Thanks again to Rob Murdoch for supplying the parts and helping out with tons of useful information. We have more ground to cover though, just like I mentioned on the carburetor and the steering rack. And I think we'll almost have it sorted. I don't have all the metal pans and things on it yet because we're trying to discover if it's leak-free still. And it is most of the way. So for all the leaks that it had, it's 80% fixed. I can't complain about that. So if you're curious what kind of tools we used on this or any other car in the shop, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because you're going to want to keep up with this as we do the carburetor tear down. We're going to pull the steering rack out of this thing and fix the boots or the seals that are inside of it. And continue to get this thing further and further down the road of fully road-worthy. Thanks for watching, guys.